Aloha, welcome to the Cozy Zone. I'm your host, Persephone Jane, and we are continuing our series of extracting the EQ that we can learn from picture books, because picture books are for everyone, not just for children. Today we're talking about Invisible Things by Andy J. Pizza and Sophie Miller. If you don't follow Andy J. Pizza's podcast, you should be following it, listening to it, subscribe to it. It's called The Creative Pep Talk, and he basically talks about creative work and how to be a creative person in, the world today. But it's a really great podcast. That being said, this is his book, Invisible Things. It's all about invisible things that he has made visible, like a wish, hope, guts. This book is rather straightforward and didactic, but because it's talking about invisible things and the illustrations are wildly colorful, it kind of works together. What I love about this book most is there's a couple pages where there's more of an interaction happening. You may have met some invisible things with your sense of hearing. A dog bark, a cock-a-doodle-doo, a whisper. And then it says, what do you think these sounds could be? And there's a whole page of illustrations that you or your child can interact with, can look at and think about and engage with and maybe even name. It happens, I think, one or two other times. And this idea that you could maybe even follow me here, write in this book, if you're looking at this page and you decide what this feels like or looks like, you could write it underneath, just like these are. And I think that's awesome. I think the idea that, okay, as an author myself, I am of the opinion that once I produce a book and I put it out into the world, it is no longer mine. It is the reader's. They interact with it. They interact with each other about it. But I am no longer the owner of that work. They are. This takes that to the next level by asking you to participate in what's happening on the page and allowing you to write in it if you wanted to. And I think that's awesome, because the more we interact with books in a lot of different ways, the more we recognize what we can get from them. So this talks about using all of our senses in order to locate all of the invisible things. And then, of course, it talks about feelings, because those are the ultimate invisible things. Some might be confusing, and you might label them as not so great, but you might label them as really awesome, like being lost in a book, spirit, a spooky, an itch, nostalgia, chaos, a dream. Here's our feelings, some of them anyway. Anger, the giggles, worries, the blahs. They look like rocks. If your children are having a hard time naming things, this is an excellent book to begin with. There's a lot in here to name, so maybe you read it once and then when you need it, you come back to it. And focus on a particular thing. It's also a good concept book, okay? Because not in that it's teaching a concept, although it's teaching about invisible things. However, what I'm talking about is if you've read this story and then your child is having a feeling, they can sit down and draw that, having this as the touch point. Like, remember invisible things? And how, Andy J. Pizza drew a dream and he drew joy. Maybe you could draw what you're feeling, and that would help me see what it looks like. Because once it has a name and has a visual, not only is your child or you getting it out in that way, but it helps you make sense of it. It helps you to engage with it in a more meaningful way. When we ignore it or suppress it, it becomes more nebulous, not less. And we want it to be less nebulous so that we can process it. This, I think, gives you and your children a great shared vocabulary to process emotions and discuss emotions. It's kind of a long book. However, it is so colorfully illustrated that I don't think you'll notice the pages. Thanks for joining me for Invisible Things. See you next week.